Hello, Marco again, and this year I'm going to start by doing something different. Instead of talking about fanfics or some other fan works, I am going to talk about the gender wage gap. And yes, I know the gender wage gap has been debunked by several other YouTubers, but this is my video and I can talk about whatever I want. And in this video I'm going to talk about the math of the gender wage gap and how they get, through misunderstanding the math, the wrong conclusions. So how do they get the math wrong on a gender wage gap, you might ask? The way they get it wrong is by leaving some factors out of the calculations. Factors like industry, life choices, how many hours people work, and many other factors. And without those factors you get a totally different average wage per hour than with those factors. In this video I'm going to debunk the gender wage gap with a simplified calculation of how I think how they calculate it. And for those of you who want to know how I calculate my findings, I will leave the math on screen so that you can check it out yourself. So here's my example. There is a guy named Carl who owns Carl's Stuff Shop. He has 6 employees, 3 male ones, Mark, Bob and Jim, and 3 female ones, Jane, Mary and Daisy, who each earn 1.5 floricles per hour. This is a video about the gender wage gap, not what the minimum wage should be. Each works a different amount of hours in the week. We begin with calculating what the men earn in a week by multiplying the amount of floricles they earn per hour with the amount of hours they work in the week. After we have done that, we are going to add those numbers together and then divide that by 3 to get the average amount of floricles the men earn in a week. We repeat the same process with the female employees, and now we have the average amount of floricles female and male employees make in the week. But we want to get the average amount of floricles they earn in an hour. And this is the part where it goes wrong, but I shall explain later why that is. So we are going to add up the hours that each employee works in the week together and divide that by the number of employees to get the average amount of hours each employee works in the week. Now the final part. We are going to figure out the average wage per hour with the numbers that we have. So we are going to divide the average amount a male-female employee at Carl's Stuff Shop earns per week by the average amount an employee works at the shop. And through that we get the average amount a male-female employee at Carl's Stuff Shop earns per hour. Which, if you divide these two averages by each other and multiply the answer by 100, you can see that Carl pays every woman that works for him 91.77 etc. for simplicity's sake, 92 cents on the floricle a man makes. Which, if a bad journalist gets a hand on and publicizes only the last part, makes Carl look like a misogynistic asshole. But if you look at all the calculations we made, you know this is nonsense. We know each male and female employee earn the same amount an hour. Where it all goes wrong is with the hours, because we take the average hours all employees make in the week and not the average hours the female employees or the male employees make in the week. Because if we did that, we would get the same amount of floricles per hour with male and female employees. And it is only one variable where it can go wrong. Because in the calculations I made it so that each employee does the same job for the same pay. But there are different scenarios which can affect the formula and would make the wage gap even bigger. 1. Mark does a different job than everybody else. That makes it so that he earns 2 floricles in an hour. Because Mark does a different job, causes our formula to change and makes the gender wage gap even bigger. 2. Mary's daughter gets sick and she must watch over her for a day, and because of that she misses 2 hours of work. Which, because of Mary's choices to stay home for a day and take care of her daughter, changes our formula and makes it so that the gender wage gap again becomes bigger for that week. The last scenario. Bob, who has been working for the most hours of all the employees at Carl's store, demands a raise, which Carl gives him as an incentive for Bob to work harder, which would also have an effect on our formula and would make the gender wage gap even higher. And there are many other factors which could affect this formula and make the gender wage gap even larger. So now you know the math behind how the average wage is calculated, and the more factors you include, the smaller the gender wage gap becomes. Because typically men and women don't work the same amount of time. They do different kinds of work, have different priorities, and have many more differences which can affect the amount they earn. Only when those factors are all the same between man and a woman do they earn the same in an hour. And in most modern countries it isn't allowed by law to pay less per hour based on gender. I hope you like this video, and please like and subscribe and hit that bell icon for notifications for when my next video comes out.